Happy Thursday, everyone, from a dark and rainy, quite miserable Yorkshire. Welcome to Live from Redfearn's Bar for session number 19 in this series of interviews brought to you by Barnsley FC Supporters Trust. Apologies to those that have heard this spiel numerous times now, but just as a reminder, the main objective when we set all of this up was to support supporters during lockdown or isolation, and we can't thank our guests enough for giving us their time and thoughts, essentially letting us into their homes for a Tuesday or Thursday night chat. That absolutely rings true for tonight's guest, and it's one we've been excited about since the day it was confirmed. He might have only played 45 games in 15 months, but he bagged 20 goals, almost fired us to Premier League survival, and on the pitch he demonstrated everything that's synonymous with the town of Barnsley, leading to a very, very special relationship with the fans. It's time to say a warm good evening to Ashley Ward. How you doing, Ash?
How you doing, Ben? Yeah, great, thanks. Yeah, good to great introduction, by the way. I'm happy with that.
At least it works this time. But many thanks for doing this. I hope you and the family are keeping well during lockdown.
Yeah, we're just getting on with it. It's not great for anybody, is it? But people in a lot worse positions, obviously, with what's going on. So yeah, just get on with it, and hopefully one day we get back to the real world.
Absolutely.
Football, that's what we want.
Well, fingers crossed. 10 days, I think.
Yeah.
We normally have a couple of icebreakers about behind closed football, season restarting, etc. But there's so much we want to ask you about your career and time at Oakwell that we're just going to crack right on with it and take a teenage Ashley Ward playing for Manchester United Juniors, if that's all right.
Yeah. I was at Man United as a schoolboy. Got released, actually. Alex Ferguson came in and released everybody, didn't he really even see us play. He came in towards the end of that season, I think, and we just didn't take anybody on at all. So fortunately, at the time, City were really big in the youth development. So a lot of their first team at the time had all come through the system, and I was really lucky to be offered straight away from Man City, which was really my dream choice because I was a City fan and didn't have to leave home, and they had this magnificent record as well for developing talent. So it was perfect for me, really.
I was going to ask whether you were red or blue side of Manchester growing up, but you just answered that. So it really was a dream move starting as an apprentice at City.
Yeah, I don't know why, because I ended up at United, and I'd probably given the choice at 14. I would have gone to City anyway. So, as a kid, you come in. Obviously, Alex Ferguson wanted to set his own thing up there, change the development round, and we were like obviously devastated. And then all of a sudden, City. Well, that was my preferred choice anyway. So it was probably a bad 2 or 3 weeks until City came along, and then it was a dream come true. And yeah, City fan. Went to I was at the cup final, the Ricky Villa Cup final in '81, I think. 10 years old. So yeah, it's always been my club from a young age.
You were signed by some real household names throughout your career, and we'll bring a few of them up as we go. But Brian Little's the first one that stood out when he took you to Leicester. What was Brian Little like to play for?
Well, do you know what? It was a bit unfortunate, really, because I went to Leicester. It was one of those periods where I was a young lad coming through, and I was struggling with injury, so I didn't really do a lot for Brian, if I'm honest. Do you know what I mean? I was probably 21-year-old. They bought me for 100,000 or something, 100,000, and I think at that stage with that kind of injury, I probably needed somebody just to put an arm around me and say, keep your head up, and where I think obviously Brian was rightly so totally encapsulated in getting his first team into the Premier League, and so I was kind of in and out of that on the bench, a bit injured, and so I didn't really we didn't really get the best out of each other, if you like. So but did a fabulous job for Leicester, and was until Martin O'Neill came along, probably, and later Ranieri, obviously one of the most successful managers they've ever had. Yeah.
And your breakthrough moment, career and goals-wise, came at Crewe under another renowned legend of the game in Dario Gradi. What was it that made that Crewe setup so good at producing these young stars all the time?
Yeah, I think, with the people used to call it the academy, and I think, in many ways it was like an academy because obviously Dario was a first-team manager. He'd be judged, he'd stand and fall by whether the team was successful or not, but he'd been there quite a while by the time I got there, and he kind of established himself as Mr. Crewe, if you like, the main man. And I think he could afford to. He's one of the only. He's the only man I've worked for to spend his time developing players and not just concentrate on winning games you know, ordinarily it's, you know, probably quite rightly so. It's, you play a game, you focus on the next game, you train for the next game, you deal with the opposition. But there's no like, well, how do we make this player a better player? What do we do? You know, he's all right, but we could do with being better at this and better at that. And he was the first time anybody came along, and he did that to every player, really. He treated every first team player like he'd treat the under-14s academy, you know. I think we can improve this player. And obviously, he signed players that he felt he could improve. And nobody's done it better, have they, really?
No, not all. And we talked before we started, we said that you and Craig Ignitt kind of passed it like ships in the night at Crewe. But which other youngsters were at Crewe when you were playing with that?
Oh, Danny Murphy, Neil Lennon, all in our team. Gareth Worley went to Bradford when I was there. Different ones came, you know, I'm probably forgetting loads now, but it was like there was always somebody coming along. But yeah, I remember a young Danny Murphy in the team and thinking he's going to be a decent player, you know. Over the years, there's so many.
Yeah. The next big move then were Norwich, where I think you were brought in to help them get over losing Chris Sutton to Blackburn. That was a jump to the Premier League. Was there any extra pressure moving up from Crewe to Norwich?
Yeah, I mean, there's massive pressure, really, because I remember going down there to speak to him, signing, and in a flash, I'm there with my now wife. Is she my wife then? No, she wasn't even my wife then. We're walking around the city thinking, bloody hell, you know, signed for the Premier League. Can I do it? You know, I hadn't played. I played like one game for City or something. I didn't know whether I could do it at that level. You know, you're confident, but you think, you know, you don't know. So yeah, we're walking around and obviously very nervous, and I'm thinking, you know, if I'm on the bench on Saturday against Chelsea, that'd be good, and maybe I'd get on, and who knows, you could even get a chance and score. You know, I'm going to be sub sort of thing, and next thing you know, the gaffer's pulling me saying, "Oh, you're going to be starting on Saturday." You know, I only signed on the Thursday from Crewe. But you know, it all went brilliant. I scored 2. We won the game, and best way to start for a striker, obviously, nick a couple of goals on your debut against one of the top sides, and helps you settle in easily.
Oh yeah, and while you were at Norwich, there was a bit of manager turmoil, I guess, in terms of John Deere and then Gary Megson, Martin O'Neill, back to Gary Megson, I think. How different were all those three to play under? Because Martin O'Neill, you've got another iconic manager there that you've played for.
Yeah, I mean, John Deere was a really nice guy, and I knew him from City as a kid. When I was at City, he was assistant manager to Mel Machin, who obviously formed Barnsley. So he knew of me and he took me there, and that's probably why I had the confidence to play him in the first game. I don't know, but he you know, it was a real shame that it's all about results at the end of the day, isn't it? And, you know, he was a good manager. It was always a tough job to keep people in the Premier League, and having gone down, obviously Meggie went in, and he'd worked under John, so there's a bit of similarity there. But I always thought Meggie would end up a really good manager, and it was one of his, probably maybe his first job. That again, I knew Gary Megson from Man City. I used to clean his boots. Actually, I was his apprentice. So he knew me, and I always thought he'd be a good manager, and he did a good job at Norwich. But of course, Martin O'Neill came in. It was just a completely different thing, you know. I mean, I loved the time under Martin. I thought it was a great coach to work for, especially in those days, you know. And you kind of got the feeling, I never had this conversation with him, but you kind of got the feeling that there was a lot of Brian Clough in him, and he'd taken a lot of what he'd learned off Brian Clough and his style of management and his motivation of players. And you know, I mean, he could motivate you by being the biggest, your biggest fan, but he could also motivate other players by absolutely annihilating them, you know. But fortunately, he quite liked me, so I got the confidence route, you know. But some players he went after, it was brutal, you know. But yeah, it was great fun to work for, and you know, no surprise that he went on to have a great career as a manager.
And then you moved on from Norwich, big money moved to Derby in '96, and another character of the game in Jim Smith was who signed you. What was Jim like as a manager?
Yeah, I mean, at the time at Derby, they kind of had the perfect mix, because they had Jim as the manager, you know, old school, really, you know, old school manager. Just how you'd imagine, just how the managers were when I was apprentice at Man City. You know, it was just kind of really old school. And then his assistant was Steve McLaren. So Steve was really into the science, probably nerd of it and stuff like that, you know. So we had this super sort of scientific side going on with Steve at the sort of forefront of technology, and we had this wise old Ed who'd been in the game for a million years, you know, as the gaffer. So you know, he was into the sort of trips away and all the sort of old school team bonding and stuff like that. It was great times, and again, successful times for Derby, you know, promotions and staying in the Premier League.
And I looked at that Derby squad that you played with back then, and a lot of your teammates had a go at management: Chris Powell, Paul Simpson, Gary Rowett, Dean Yates. I have to pull in another couple that I've not mentioned. I know you're on a different career path, but was management something that you considered at any point?
Do you know what? It was something I probably did consider, and then I got into business while I was still playing at the back end of my career, and I never had a day off. I came out of football, went straight in the office, and you know, before you know it, 5 years have gone by. You kind of lost your contacts. You know, you're not in that game anymore. Other people are. They're taking the badges. You're not, and you know, that avenue is not available. But in a way, you do often. Well, I do. I sit there and think, God, I wonder if I would have been a decent manager or not. You know, a decent coach, or you know, I think I know the game well, but you know, you never know now, which is frustrating.
Well, this brings us to September '97 and the move to Oakwell, and Barnsley are adapting to Premier League for the first time in our history. How did the move to Barnsley come about, and was it a transfer that was on the cards all summer?
As far as I'm aware, I don't think it was on the cards for long at all, to be honest. I think I might be wrong, but I think the main target was Ian Dowie at the time for Danny. I was at Derby. I was playing most games. You know, there was a lot of competition at Derby, but I was happy with that. I was getting my fair share of goals and enjoying it. We're in a new stadium. I had no real ambition to move or change clubs, but then Jim's always a wheeler dealer. You know, he if an offer came in, he'd listen to it, and I suppose if he meant he could reshuffle the squad or whatever. So from playing games for Derby, I played against Barnsley the week before. I think I signed, and at the time there'd been some interest from some other clubs. I'd spoken to some other clubs, decent clubs, and I guess without that game, I don't know whether I would have signed for Barnsley, to be honest, because you knew it was going to be a struggle. You know, any team coming up, they'd never been up in the Premier League before, so I think I would have thought, well, why am I going to go there? I might as well stay here. You know, we've sort of established ourselves in the Premier League now, and new stadium. But then we played at Derby, and we were a decent side, you know, in our ground. And Barnsley come at us, and I think we won the game, Derby, but we were lucky. You know, Barnsley had the better of the game. They passed the ball around. I remember thinking, crikey, these are a decent side. These, you know what I mean? They've got a good chance, really good chance of staying up, and they looked like they'd be fun to play in that team. You know, just like watching Brazil. The fans were right behind them, just like watching Brazil and all that. So that was more than anything was what swayed me, to be honest, to go down and speak to Danny the week after, literally a few days later.
And was Danny clear with you on how he wanted you to fit into the team and how that was going to help us stay up and fight against relegation?
I think there was obviously the game against Derby I'm talking about, and then when I went to speak to Danny, I think that was probably the next thing that cemented it. Really, I thought, God, I'm going to sign for that. And like I say, a couple of weeks before, I probably I wouldn't have thought of it. But I spoke to Danny, and Danny was like, "This is how we're going to play. We're going to fullbacks are all good on the ball. Midfielders are going to move out of the way. You're going to play it into your feet. You're going to get all of it. Play it into midfield. Redders will run off you." And, you know, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds like what I want to do." Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, I played for a lot of clubs in the Premier League where survival is always the key for the smaller clubs, and you end up like a defender playing up front. You know, you just, you know, away games you're just written off. You're never going to score a goal because you're just defending all the time. But he's like, "I want you to be the focal point. We'll get the ball into your feet." So that a clear understanding of how we're going to play, and obviously I knew by that stage that there were good football inside.
And you joined us just as we'd started what was our worst run of the season, and you know, plenty of people were writing us off at that stage. I can't remember if it was 5 or 6 defeats on the bounce. Can you remember much about coming into a side that was losing and Danny having to keep spirits high?
I remember that the spirits were high. Anyway, obviously the promotion was long forgotten by in the Premier League was still right behind the lads, and it really was. I mean, everyone says it, and it's easy to say, but it's not always true. But it was definitely true. They were a great bunch of lads, a great team spirit, and it never felt low, even when I went there, because I think throughout that stage, I mean, I know that there'd been games where obviously there was a Chelsea game before I signed, but whenever I went, we were in every game, really. You know, felt like we were in every game, and we were giving everybody, and it felt like the tide would turn. You know, so Danny did it. Obviously, had to keep morale going, but I think the lads did a lot of that themselves as well.
And your first goal came at Oakwell against Coventry in a 2-0 win. Was it a relief to get off the mark? And can you remember the goal?
Do you know, I can't remember the goal. I remember it was a relief to get off the mark, because, like I say, when I signed for Norwich on my debut, scored 2, and that settles you in straight away. But you know, going and signing for a club for a decent amount of money, you know, and then as a striker, you just want to get that first goal in the bag and settle down a bit. So yeah, it was a massive relief. But I can't remember it now. I remember the game. I remember the sort of characters that played for Coventry in that period, and I remember the sort of running out of Oakwell and Coventry. You know, that game. I think it was, for some reason I think it was raining or whatever, but I don't remember the goal.
Well, you remember this next one because your next goal was a big one, and that was the winner at Anfield. What's going through your head when Patrick Berg passes you the ball 6 yards out?
Yeah, do you know what I was thinking? Just turn quickly and get it in the net. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It was a tap in. But yeah, I was just surprised, to be honest, because you know, obviously he was a good technical player, and the ball's come to him. It's just a poor first touch, to be honest. Put it straight into my path. So I was I took a touch and just rolled it over the line rather than take any chances. You know, just a toe poke over the line. But I remember thinking, we've got a long way to go now. You know, this is going to be the Alamo, and it was.
I think Danny said, I thought I'd had a dozen heart attacks in the second half as we held on for that 1-0 win. As a striker, just kind of playing on your lonesome up front, what was it like watching it unfolding in front of you, the attack after the attack?
Yeah, well, you're just thinking, oh, they're going to score it. You know, you obviously you're fighting, but you think one of these is going to go in. And obviously Lars was pulling off saves. People were clearing off the line. Peter Marks, I'm not sure whether that was his debut or something like that. You know, and he was sliding last minute, and it was. You know what? There's not many teams go and win at Anfield and don't have to come under an amount of pressure. I mean, it was excessive. I'm not going to lie. It was the whole second half we were hanging on, but what a memory, and what a great result. My wife was with what's the manager called? That was with Stacey Evans, the Liverpool manager's son, the Liverpool manager's daughter, and sat in the director's box next to him. So it was a bit embarrassing for her because we absolutely stole the points. But yeah, I remember in the players' lounge afterwards, getting a drink and going quick.
You mentioned Lars Lees pulling off save after save. A lot's made about him signing for Barnsley and the fact that he'd never really played a professional game, we don't think. Can you remember watching him in training and being apprehensive about him being in goal?
Do you know what? I didn't know he'd not played a game. Really, is that right? Crikey,
there's some story where he was the third or fourth choice at Leverkusen, but his agent came in and said he was reserved, but he'd been playing in the fourth or fifth German division or something.
Oh, right. He never played at any kind of level, right? Yeah, well, it was always obviously a big loss to lose Watto for you know, because he was an established keeper, England under 21, and you know, a safe pair of hands. So we were, yeah. I think a few of the lads are a bit like, how's this going to work out, you know? But yeah, it worked out well on the day.
You scored again in your next game at home to Leeds, and we raced into a 2-0 lead, and then there was that heartbreaking 3-2 defeat. Do you remember that result being a bit of a body blow at the time?
Yeah, I think there was a few games over the season that you think, you know, they were turning points, if you like. That was one of them. Obviously, later on, we're going to come to probably the Liverpool game. And there was a few where you think, you know, we could have got points there. We were unlucky, and the margins were fine. We got punished by Premier League teams like you do, you know. So yeah, that was certainly a turning point. But it was always going to be a tough year. You know, we're never going to come through it. And you just can think that those fine margins in some of those close games could have made all the difference. Well, definitely could have done, because 35 points at the end of the day was a decent tally. You turn a couple of wins into a couple of draws into wins, and you've stayed up.
Yeah, definitely. And your next 2 goals came in back-to-back 1-0 home wins over Derby and Palace. I shared the Derby goal on social media today, and your reaction speaks volumes. But was that a big goal for you against a former club?
Yeah, do you know what? It's always good to score against your former club, because, you know, like I said, I was in the team at Derby, I was playing games, and all of a sudden, you know, surprising myself, we've got an offer here, you know, which is pretty similar offer to what they paid for me, actually. So you think, well, why are they selling me then? You know, so yeah, it's great to kind of prove a point, if you like. I remember being in the dressing room afterwards, and John Dennis saying, "Not the only effing thing you did, that." Which is probably true. I didn't play that well against him, but yeah, it was good to get the goal and win the game.
At this point in the season, you're scoring goals, we're getting wins, we're even keeping clean sheets, which was unheard of for the first dozen or so games. How different was the dressing room in the club at that point versus when you first joined?
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a real belief at that stage. We were picking up points, like I say, clean sheets. I think was that around about the time. Was that later on? We played Villa away and won, and
yeah, that came just after. Yeah, I think.
Yeah. So that was the period, really. And if we could have kept that run going a bit longer, that's when we could have, you know, made all the difference. So, I mean, the belief, believe it or not, you know, the belief was always there. I felt, you know, and even towards the end, when we went through the really bad spell, you think, oh, this is going to turn. We can win some of these games. Sadly not, but. Yeah, the belief was strong, really.
Danny brought in Jan Arger in January to help us up front, and in hindsight, to Barnsley fans, we could have probably done with both of you through the door on the 1st of August. Did you feel at the time you needed some help up top if you wanted to kick on a little bit?
Yeah, I think the way we played at the time, yeah. I mean, any kind. I mean, I missed a few games with like a bit of illnesses, and just before the Liverpool game, I'd been out with some kind of illness, and I had meningitis, actually, believe it or not, after the Man United match. I ended up in hospital, meningitis, and just to have you know, a bigger sort of pool of people up front, and also to be able to play 2 strikers up front. You know, we developed a decent rapport together, and he was a goal scorer, it was Jan, and that makes life a lot easier if somebody's chipping in with goals. And at the end of the day, you've got to score goals in that league to stay up. You've got to keep clean sheets as well, but you're not scoring goals, you're not going to stay up. So the more the merrier, and I think with Jan, it worked for us.
Yeah, I was going to say, we won 3 games in a row, which put us right back in the mix. We beat Wimbledon, Villa and Southampton, both of you scoring goals. Did you really click as a pair pretty quickly, as it looked like to us fans on the sidelines?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still friends with Jan now. You know, I speak to him every now and again. He's obviously in Norway, and he was a good character. You know, good lad to have in the dressing room, bags of banter, and he was an experienced centre forward. So it's easy to play with somebody like that, because, you know, I knew what he wanted. You know, in those days, I was happy to do all the running around. You know, he was quite happy to do a lot less of it. So it worked quite well, really. And he was a goal poacher, and he knew how to play, and he knew where he wanted to be, and that was in the box most of the time. It's probably, you know, I probably criticism me, if anything, was I was outside the box too much, chasing around, and Jan was the ideal foil, because we'd always have somebody in the box then to nick the goals.
You mentioned it just before, but we get to the Liverpool game at Oakwell, and I think you're injured for this one. Looking back, yeah, and
I was in hospital in Sheffield. I think it was something to do with this meningitis thing again, but yeah, it was a shame. Yeah, and I didn't really. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, just being completely honest, is that the craziest football match you've witnessed involving one of your clubs?
Well, it's definitely the crazy. I mean, I was hearing bits of it, because I was quite ill, and I couldn't go to the game or anything. So I was just kind of hearing bits on the radio, you know, in bed. So I went in hospital, and it was just like, I couldn't believe it. You know, when you think it couldn't get any more bizarre, it did. And in many ways, I'm glad I wasn't there watching it, you know, because it would have been even more frustrating, you know. The lads must have played unbelievable. I've never ever seen any footage. Scored right in the last few minutes, didn't they?
Yeah, sorry, we just lost you for 2 seconds there. Yeah, it was. We got the penalty to bring it back to 3-2, so 2-2, and then they went and got the winner in the last few minutes. I mean, it was a massive debacle, and fans were furious, players were upset. When you got back to training after being injured, could you feel that we'd lost a bit of the wind out of our sails?
I think it definitely that more than anything was the kind of nail in the coffin. It was. You couldn't help the manner in which things had happened. I think knocks the wind out of your sails. And like I say, the spirit was always good, but I think you could definitely feel something after that. That was like points robbed, if you like. And almost like, well, we're the small guys, the underdogs, and they've done it to us. That's what happens. Nobody wants us here. It's the big boys club, and we've suffered because we're not one of them. So that did knock the wind out of the sails, and as much as anything, contributed to where we ended up.
And I think that's how it felt for all supporters. I think at that point we just thought the Premier League was against us. But over the rest of the season, we didn't really pick up many points. We got a win against Sheffield Wednesday, which you and Janaga scored in. And then I think that we got relegated at Filbert Street then. Can you remember the feelings at the final whistle?
Yeah, it's just a sickening feeling, It's and by the time I got to Filbert Street, it was kind of looming really, because as close as we'd come. By the time we got to Filbert Street, it was kind of the die was a bit cast, and you kind of had that sickening feeling going into the game. Really, you feel for the supporters because they've waited a long time to get there. You feel for yourself because it's your career, and we all want to play in the Premier League, and it's been such an amazing experience for the town and the players and the fans that to lose that is it's hard to take. It really is.
Can you remember what Danny said to the team in the dressing room after the game and what it was like on the coach on the way back?
Do you know what? I can't really. I can remember. All I can remember is I remember what it's like on the coach on the way back. Not very quiet. But I can't remember what Danny said. But if I had to guess, I'd say it'd be. I'm pretty sure he'd have said, "Look, we can bounce back. You've done yourselves proud. It's a tough division. We've found out how tough it is, but we've pushed it with a bit of luck, we would have stayed up." So I don't think there was, and I think what was fabulous is the supporters were behind us because they knew what effort the lads had put in. They knew what effort Danny had put in, and all the coaching staff, Eric, and it was a combined effort. It wasn't quite enough at the end of the day, but I think what was nice that you don't always get a lot of clubs. I think all the fans appreciate that these guys will give everything, and there's a chance you could bounce back, which sadly didn't happen. But that's always your hope when you go down, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look back at that season, do you think we still don't get the credit we deserve? People remember 7-0 at Old Trafford, 6-0 at West Ham. But we got 35 points, which is more than most teams. And, 2 or 3 results going the other way, and we'd have stayed up.
Yeah, without a doubt, I don't think. Yeah, I think when you look back on things, to people who aren't Barnsley fans, or they'll just look and think, "Oh yeah, they came up and they didn't survive," But there was much more than that. Like we say, 35 points. I don't know what stayed up in the end, but a couple of results that draws into wins, or winning games that we should have won, that we had plenty of opportunities in the Liverpool game, the Leeds game. They're all things that could have made the difference, and maybe bigger squad earlier on if possible. It's not easy. The money, there was obviously great rewards for being in the Premier League in those days, but compared to now, it was even. I think in those days it was even less of a level playing field as now. The bottom clubs now can buy, your Bournemouths can buy players for 30 million now, or I don't think it was like that then. I think a lot of the money was still with the top clubs, and we had quite a sparse squad, I felt at times, for to compete at that level. You know, we had some good players, great players, and but we didn't have we weren't blessed with a big squad as you never would imagine to have, really.
We also had more than a decent FA Cup run that season. How big a memory is the Man United win for you?
Just losing you a bit on the Wi-Fi. It's probably my dodgy Wi-Fi living out in the sticks. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, got you back now. I was saying we had more than a decent FA Cup run that season as well. Can you remember how big a memory was that win against Man United?
Do you know what? I look back on the FA Cup run. I think that as much as anything was a missed opportunity. You know, I fancied us here at Newcastle. You know, away. Obviously the Tottenham one at home we beat on a wet night. It was fabulous. The Man United games, you know, away from home and bringing them back to our place and winning. John Hendry's outside of the footer into the top bin. You know, those were great games. I don't think there's anything better, and especially in those days, the FA Cup on a midweek day with a bit of rain on the pitch. You know, packed like the Tottenham game, packed home ground. They were fantastic memories, those, and I fancied us to go. You know, that I look at that and I think, God, we were close to getting to Wembley in a major competition there.
You said we came unstuck against Newcastle, sadly. As a physical striker yourself, what did you make of the Alan Shearer and Adi Moses red card?
Well, again, you know, you just don't think it would happen the other way around. You know, I think there was some Shearer used to mark me in those days at corners and stuff like that. And there was some pictures in the paper, and my dad's still got on his wall, fully enough. And he's got both arms wrapped around me in like 4 or 5 different frames going across it was in the Daily Mail or Mirror or something like that. And you think, oh, that you know, if we'd done that, there'd be penalties all over, you know. And like, you know, you just felt again, it's like, well, the big names, the big clubs were getting the rub of the green, and I definitely feel in that game, and you know, decisions and the right rub of the green, and we'd have progressed in that competition, and we'd have still been talking about that as well as the Premier League.
And then obviously we've been relegated back down to the Championship, and that summer saw Danny and Redders move on. Were you close to going that summer as well, or was that never on the cards?
Yeah, there was interest in the summer, and right through, you know, to when I eventually left. To be honest, yeah, I was in a lot of contact with the chairman, with John Dennis. You know, it was fantastic with us, really. You know, it was very open and honest all the way through with that. You know, he spoke to my agent a lot, spoke to himself, and yeah, I think in many ways we'd have loved to, you know, I'd have loved to have stayed up in that Premier League and stayed at Barnsley, because probably the most enjoyable time of my career, to be honest. You know, any year in the Premier League is something to be cherished, but that year was special in terms of the supporters, and you know, like I say, the whole, just like watching Brazil, and you know, you could get beat, but as long as you put the energy and the effort in, and personify what the town's about, and what people want from a player, there is 100% effort. And, you know, you just got that feeling that it was a special place to be that year. And if we'd have stayed up, for sure, I would have stayed there, you know. But I was kind of getting to 27, 28 and thinking, well, how many more years in the Premiership? If we, you know, we weren't in a position by the time I left in November, December, didn't look like we were going to bounce straight back up, you know. Obviously, Danny had gone, Redders had gone. So it kind of made my decision for me in a way, yeah.
Well, thankfully, you didn't go in the summer, and we kept you for a few months, which led to 15 goals. John Dennis decided to bring John Hendry in to replace Danny. How much of a surprise was that to you when that announcement came?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a shock, because John was one of the lads, obviously, and he's, you know, 1 minute he's we're all turning in for training, and John was a big character, you know, good fun, great crack. You know, next thing you know, you've got to readjust, and you got to call him Gaffy, you know. But I think it was. I think for John as well, it was a difficult. Any club coming out of the Premiership, to bounce back's not easy, you know. and so much depends on how you start the season, and getting that momentum working for you rather than against you. And I feel a bit sorry for John, because I think it's probably the right opportunity at the wrong time, really. A difficult act to follow, and a hard to take over.
And as I said, you were scoring for fun, it seemed, in the Championship, which probably explains why Blackburn were happy to pay so much money for you. But despite our patchy form, there were a couple of standout games before you left, one of them being Sunderland away. They're cruising in the division. We turn up and win 3-2. You score, miss a penalty, and get sent off all in 5 minutes. Can you talk us through that mad 5 minutes and what your thoughts are on Darren Williams?
It was just, that was the craziest thing. I remember sat in the dressing room. There wasn't a soul in the dressing room, and normally the coach or somebody comes with, or physio. I think Mick Tarmer came in about a few minutes later. But I remember sitting in the dressing room thinking, "Has that just happened? That was weird." I didn't even have a sweat on, And without even having a sweat on, I didn't have a mark on my kit or anything. I'm like, I've scored, I've missed a penalty, and been sent off. But yeah, it was surreal, really. It was. What was he called? Who you asking about? What was his name?
Darren Williams, I think, wasn't it?
Darren Williams, yeah. He put in a late tackle. That probably doesn't, even on video when I watched it back, he didn't really. The whistle had gone. That was the point. The whistle had already gone, and then he came through the back of me after the whistle, and before I knew it, I'd already reacted and kicked out of him. Bit of a something and nothing, like like Beckham's in the World Cup. It was nothing really, And the next thing he's rolling around, and you're off the pitch, and it's a lesson learnt, really. You can't do that, and no matter what the circumstances, I felt wronged, because, like I said, the tackler coming well after the whistle anyway. But it's one of those things. But great, what a result for Bruce to pick up the gauntlet. Apparently, well, I saw the second half. He was fantastic in that game, and it was the start of his Barnsley. Becoming a legend at Barnsley, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and he did that away from home a couple of times. Another memorable night under the lights at Oakwell was Huddersfield 7-1. Your last game for Barnsley, I think, and the only time we got to see you and Craig Ignat in the same side. Was that as good a send-off as you could have hoped for?
Yeah, I mean, that was amazing. It was that. Was you at that game? Yeah, I mean, it was 7-1 didn't do it justice. Could have been 17-1, really. I mean, we missed so many more chances than we scored. It was like, I don't think I've ever played, even when we've been battered by teams, in teams I've played for, I've never actually played in a game that was so one-sided. It was like virtually every time we got the ball, we flashed one past the post, or it was great to play in. And what was it, half time? A lot of the damage was done before in the first half, wasn't it? It was like
6-0 at half time, I think.
6-0 at half time, yeah. And literally could have been 10-0 at half time. We could have broke records that night, really, with a bit better finishing. But maybe it was like a sign of what could have happened if we kept that team together, and maybe, the season after or whatever, we could have really got promoted automatic.
And as goals go, is Darren Barnard's left foot volley the best that you've been involved in on the pitch?
I think probably is, actually, yeah. Yeah, I've been lucky to, we've been seeing some great goals. That was, in terms of technique and everything, it was just a dream, wasn't it? And that, Darren had that kind of left foot, that seems only left footers seem to get that kind of purest of strikers of the ball, and he really did have a wand of a left foot, and that was just one of a few, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, he scored some belters. Well, we've already touched on this a little bit, but that brings us to the Blackburn move. We were all gutted to see you go and leave Barnsley. I'm guessing with the money being offered, it was inevitable, really. But was there anything that we could have done that would have made you stay for the rest of the season?
Not really, because John really, the chairman did everything he possibly could, really. He was in daily contact virtually, it felt like, with my agent, or, I spoke to him, and it, like I say, it was just a case of, I think if I'd been 21 or 22, you think, well, the time's going to come again. But I think at 27, and the figures being, it was a big transfer, 4.5 million in those days. I don't know whether British record was about 7.5 or something. So it was a great great fee for the club. Enabled the club to, do different things. There was the redevelopment of the stand and stuff, and for me personally, like I say, at 27, I'm thinking, well, Blackburn, they won the league a couple of years ago, and it was a great club for me. It was in the north. Everything seemed to be. I think the only thing that could have been different is if we'd have stayed in the Premier League. Then I would have been more than happy to stay at Barnsley. Yeah.
Were Blackburn the only team that were showing a firm interest in you at that point? Did you have options?
No, I think there was a lot of talk at the time, and I'd spoke to a few clubs, and I think the club had spoke to a few clubs. I think Leeds were talking Derby, going back to Derby. Believe it or not, they were talking about something around the fee, and there was quite a few at the time, but I don't know whether Blackburn were the first people to come up. Danny at Sheffield Wednesday, I think, was interested at the time. But I think Blackburn at the time, I think, were probably one of the only clubs who would sort of just pay the transfer fee and up front sort of thing, or just make it happen, like. So I think that made everybody's mind up.
And once you'd gone to Blackburn, and I think you played for Bradford, Sheffield United, was there ever a point where you came close to coming back to Barnsley?
Yeah, I took a medical when I was at Bradford. I was all looking forward to it, and it all fell apart at the Bradford end. I was on a contract, like I suppose a Premier League contract or whatever, and we'd gone down at Bradford, and things were a bit in a mess, and certain things that were promised on the Bradford contracts never actually happened. So it kind of all fell apart, and ended up going back there. I haven't done the medical, so it was a bit of a shame, really, because I was looking forward to it.
Who was Barnsley manager at the time then?
Sounds really bad, this, but it's 20. What's 20 years ago? What was it? I can't remember. What would it be? I don't remember. I don't know. Oh God, I should know, shouldn't I?
Is it Nigel Spackman?
No.
Spackman, Dave Bassett?
No, not Dave Bassett, no.
Later than that, then?
When would it be? It'd be like...
Is it 03?
I think maybe a bit before that, 2, 3.
Steve Parkin?
It might have been Steve Parkin, actually. It might have been Steve Parkin, or it could have been
well,
Spackman.
We could have done with you because we went down.
Yeah, Matt Rooney, he might not have invited me back on then. Might not be on the show today.
Well, look, final questions now as we bring it to a close. So some no-nonsense ones to finish off. Yeah. Out of all those amazing managers that you played for, and there was a lot of them, who had the greatest influence on your football career?
The managers. I think you'd have to say, in terms of developing you as a player, Dario. Obviously in terms of playing in an attacking side, Danny, because he gave us the chance to play in the Premier League, and also gave us the chance to play to my strengths with good service into and stuff like that. So yeah, I think those two really. Yeah, Martin O'Neill as well, to be fair. I've got to say, I enjoyed playing for Martin. And
you did touch on this a little bit earlier, but where does Barnsley rank amongst all the clubs you've played for? Yeah, definitely.
Without a shadow, probably the most enjoyable time in life. Definitely in my career. It was just special because of what we talked about before. Really, the town being so up for it every week, the style of football, the atmosphere in the ground was like, I don't know what the capacity was, but it felt like it was twice as big, because you got a group of fans who've never seen the Premier League before, so it was just every game was a bonanza. It was fantastic. It really was.
And it felt like the Barnsley squad you were part of were built on team spirit, togetherness. Which players really drove that, and what's your funniest memory from your time at Oakwell?
Oh God, you just got to mention Darren Sheridan, and you'd be here all night talking about the stuff. He was. I used to travel in with him from Manchester. He was a Manc as well. used to meet up in Stockport and come over the tops together, and there was never a dull moment. He was hilarious. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that I could say, but there was plenty.
Yeah,
he was a real character, and I saw him at the Daydream Believers thing. So that was the last time I saw him actually. But he's not changed. He's still a good laugh. But there were so many characters. Obviously, you got the local lads, Nicky Eden, Watto, and he's a big character, John Hendry. There's so many of them. Just a good bunch of lads, and great team spirit.
And in terms of central defenders over your time as a striker, who's the toughest centre-back you ever played against?
There's a few, really. I used to hate playing against that old Arsenal team with like Tony Adams, Keown, Bold. They were all like big units and all tough as old boots. You just push the line really out of the pitch. That was really difficult. And then Gary Pallister was a great defender, big, 6'4", but really quick as well. And Yap Stam was a proper unit. Yeah, he's difficult to play against. Yeah, there's so many good, and Sol Campbell, but yeah, those are the sort of names that I remember from the time. He stayed playing against Martin Keown because I don't think he even knew that he was like beating you up. You don't think he even realised he was doing it. He'd come through the back of you, and he wouldn't think he'd done anything wrong. So good fun anyway.
And final question, not football related, but what is it like living with a TV crew sometimes and having these cameo appearances on ITV?
Yeah, do you know what? I'm used to it now. It's the 11th season, so when it first started, I was like, oh God, I could do without this. So, and it takes up a lot of time as well. There's a lot of them as well. It's not like doing a football interview. You get one guy with a camera and one guy interviewing you. There's 10, 12 people. So it does take up a lot of time for my wife, and always seems to be people in the house. But I'm used to it now, and it's pros and cons. It's at first it was a bit cringe, but it's in the 11th season. It's really successful now around the world. It's in about 20 countries, and it keeps getting signed up for more and more seasons and getting bigger and bigger viewing figures. So yeah, long may it continue for them.
Well, look, that was superb. That was an hour with Ashley Ward live in Redfearn's bar. Thank you very much, Ashley.
Thanks for having us. No, I really enjoyed it, reminiscing.
Well, honestly, can't thank you enough for doing it. And I know from all the messages we've had throughout the week and some of that we've had tonight, the Barnsley fans really are thankful for the time you spent at Oakwell and all the effort you put in whenever you had the Barnsley shirt on.
Oh, thanks very much. Yeah, like I say, one of the most enjoyable times of my career.
Well, look, folks, that's it for this week. Next Tuesday, we're with our 1984 Player of the Year and former goalkeeping coach, Andy Rhodes. And then next Thursday at 7 o'clock, we'll be less than 48 hours away from the Championship restart, fingers crossed. So we're hosting a discussion with BBC Radio Sheffield's Andy Giddins, Doug O'Kane from the Chronicle, and Leon Wobshaw from the Yorkshire Post. So we'll have a panel debate as such, and we'll see what's going to happen in this little mini season behind closed doors. Ashley, hero, thanks again, and best wishes to all the family.
Thanks. Good to see you.
All the best. Good night, everyone. Stay safe.